Welcome to the Red Sneaker Writers Podcast. News, interviews, and writing tips for people who are serious about having a writing career and want some practical knowledge to help them achieve it. Your host is the nationally best-selling author of more than 50 books, William Bernhardt.
Hello, sneakers. I hope your life and your writing life are going well. I'm just back from Eureka Springs and a wonderful conference. It was extremely pleasant and fun to be at a conference that I wasn't running. I could just show up at my appointed time and meet people and have fun. And of course, my new book, Exposed, is available for pre-order. Please log on to your favorite bookseller site and reserve your copy of the second book in this series that began with Splitsville, featuring lawyer Kinsey Rivera. That's the book Jesse's putting up on the screen. I don't have it hovering over my head because I don't have a copy yet. I mean, I've seen the ebook, but a physical copy, I'm still waiting for. But I have good reason to believe that it's, pretty terrific. This time, Kinsey is involved with polyamorous threesome. I mean, not personally. This is her case that she takes on, involves throuples and sexting and the Seattle Strangler and more twists and turns than she's ever seen in her life. So please pre-order your copy or tell your friends about it. Hey, Jesse, how's everything in your world?
Things are going good. I was excited about your move into the male erotica with your description there for a second.
Is that how you're reading this cover, or?
Well, again, I think we spoke to last time, it's a real Rorschach test of yourself, what this cover is and is not.
Right.
But yeah, just things are good over here. Other than
you've been traveling too, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think Louisville was still my last trip, but it's hard to remember these days. But
okay.
I think you'll appreciate this. We luckily got the ability to buy tickets for the Star Trek cruise in 2022, which we were very excited about. So,
when is that? I want to go.
It's like late February into like the very beginning of March. So I will send you information about it. Tickets might still be available.
Sounds perfect because I love Star Trek and my wife loves cruises. So, of course, the last one we did for WriterCon was about a week before they all shut down. But let's not even talk about that. That sounds super cool. Is now that Shatner is down to earth again? Is he going to appear?
I think he is listed as appearing. Yeah, it's a lot of people. Listen. If you were a Star Trek celebrity, would you not go on a cruise? Like, you're just beloved by everyone on the ship. Like, it sounds great for them and for us. So,
sounds like fun to me. All right, my interview guest today is Tamara Grantham, who I've had the pleasure of knowing for a good long time. She is the award-winning fantasy author of many books and many series, including books like The Fourth Lie and a best-selling novel, Never Call Me Vampire. That's the one hovering over my head today, and I understand a sequel is due in 2022. I want to talk to her about all these books and all these series that she's been writing. But first, the news. There's actually a phenomenal amount of news breaking right now, so forgive me if I move quickly. Item number one, the paper supply continues to threaten publishing. I don't know why we'd be surprised. Everybody's talking about the supply chain this week. President Biden's been talking about it, and everybody's trying to find a solution to get the ships out of LA's harbor and whatnot, but it's affecting publishing in a big way. Jesse's put a chart up on the screen. If you're listening to the audio version of this, you can find this at Book Manufacturers Institute, and I'll put a link in the show notes. But I mean, do I even have to describe this? All I need to tell you is that last little bitty item on the far right, that's 2021. Obviously, the paper supply is dramatic. And this will impact you, Red Sneaker writers. So let me say again, order your books in advance. If you've got events coming up, you cannot expect them to arrive as quickly as they may have in the past. For that matter, you might do well to order your Christmas gifts in advance. Normally, I hate people like my older sister. Well, I don't hate my older sister, but I hate people who like have all their Christmas shopping done before Thanksgiving. That's just irritating. But this might be a year when it makes sense because it looks like supply chain issues will make everything shop and ship slower than usual, and especially true in the book world. Okay, item number one, let me tell you about Reader Reach. I've talked about written word media before because I think they are one of the best services out there for promoting books because they're reasonably priced and you can get them and they're actually effective. I mean, we love things like BookBub too, but those are hard to get. This isn't. And they have a new feature called Reader Reach, which is designed to help you tailor and organize Facebook ads for your books. We talked about this last time, and I think that sometimes Facebook ads seem to have sort of a checkered effectiveness, but they seem to have even more plans now than I mentioned at the last podcast for helping make Facebook ads work. So if you've got books to promote, check that out. Item number three, Sue Grafton and the famed Alphabet series is headed for television. Just a day ago, as we're recording this, it was announced in Deadline that her beloved Alphabet series, which tragically ended with Y is for yesterday because she did not live long enough to do the Z book when she passed in 2017. Well, they're now going to be adapted for television. This is remarkable because Sue maintained repeatedly that she did not want Kinsey Milhone, her most famous female detective character, cheapened by Hollywood, those are her words, or written by anyone other than her. Sue had been a script writer for many years, and she knew how that worked and the process, and all kinds of hands get involved into it. And she didn't want that to happen. She said, and I quote, "I will never sell Kinsey to Hollywood. And I have made my children promise not to sell her. We've taken a blood oath. And if they do so, I will come back from the grave, which they know I can do. I've trashed other writers. I'm not going to let them have a crack at me." So you may be wondering what's changed. Well, it's hard to know for sure, but I do know that her surviving husband, Steve Humphrey, is set to serve as executive producer of this series, stating that, quote, "with the support of her family and children, this is now going to happen." I don't know, Jesse, what do you think? Should we just see this as her heirs thinking it's not, we're leaving money on the table, this is worth something? Or should we view this with disgust and outrage?
I mean, I guess it depends on how you view the artist and their art and
Mm-hmm.
who owns it and who controls it once it is out there.
Right.
Uh, I respect the fact that she kept it. You know, mysteries are huge. Like they are huge in film, they're huge in TV, they're huge in podcast form. They're
Right.
big. So she could have cashed in a long time ago and didn't, and I respect that.
Mm-hmm.
Like on the other hand, like once it's out there, it's really like it's no longer just hers, I guess. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of feels weird that she specifically said she did not want this and that her
Right.
children knew she didn't want this and then it's still happening. That's a little yucky. But
Yeah. Well,
um,
the
you know,
price is right, I think.
yeah, but I think in the end it'll probably end up selling more of her books.
Well,
So,
true, but of course she knew that in her lifetime. Everybody knows that a successful series or film is going to boost your sales. She still didn't want it. I don't know. I knew Sue Grafton some. I met her early in my career, and she was so kind to me. I have a story I won't tell because we don't have time, but I knew her and I liked her, and this kind of traumatizes me, I have to admit. Although I'll probably watch the show because I loved her character, but this is exactly what happened to Dr. Seuss, who wouldn't allow any adaptations, but as soon as he was gone, all of a sudden we had Cat in the Hat movies and Horton movies and the Lorax movies, and it's not dissimilar to what happened to Harper Lee. When she was in her declining years, suddenly Ghost set a Watchman, a book most, I think, To Kill a Mockingbird fans could have lived without, but suddenly that's released, and I don't know. That did not enhance Harper Lee's reputation or literary status at all, I think. So I don't know. This is sad. But if you get your children to swear a blood oath, and it
Get that
happens
in writing.
anyway,
Like, yeah.
yeah, get it in. Well, you could. Theoretically, you could appoint a non-relative literary executor and say no more. And maybe that's what you need to do. Charles Schultz, of course, we could still be reading Peanuts cartoons to this day, but he said, nope, it's ending. I don't want anybody else doing it. It's over, even though obviously that could have been a lot of money. Well, let's move on. Item 4, Story Origin, which is a service some of you may have been using in the past. It's a good service for people who are trying to, swap blog posts or appear in one another's newsletters. Now they've developed an app which will help you find beta readers. Well, beta readers are invaluable. It's better if you have people people you trust who are good inside of readers that will give you the straight scoop. But if you're having trouble finding that, particularly if you're early in the career, you might want to check that out. And that's at Story Origin. Item 5, Amazon has announced that they're adding performance-based advertising. As you know, Amazon ads have become very prominent in the book advertising world. No big surprise. Amazon sells more books than anybody else. And so Amazon ads are bound to be attractive. And in fact, I can tell you from experience, they do work. They're not cheap, but they do, in fact, target the right people and sell books. What this change is that now you can set it so that automatically, without you even being involved, if one of your campaigns is doing well, they will just automatically increase it. Increase it meaning increase the amount of money you're spending so that your advertising reaches more people. So yeah, you could see this as another Amazon money grab, but one that makes sense. So I'm on the fence about this too. Jesse, you have an opinion on this?
I mean, yes, it helps Amazon because they get more money.
They wouldn't be doing it otherwise.
That's true. On the other hand, if a campaign is succeeding, which is hard to keep track of as the person, right?
Mm-hmm.
If Amazon sees that it's doing well and they're like, we're gonna boost this, we're gonna double boost it, kind of like.
Mm-hmm.
I think if that ends up selling more of the author's books, I'm fine with it. I mean, again, I'm not one to click on ads that often, but
Mm-hmm.
they're getting better and better at looking like they're not ads. So
right.
we'll
Like
see. We'll see how that goes.
Amazon A+ content is all
Yeah.
about ads that don't necessarily look like ads. I mean, in a way, I can see, and I should tell everyone, you can set upper limits on this. You can set a budget that they shouldn't go beyond. But if you're like me and you've got other things to do, like novels to write and a publishing company to run and a podcast to do and about 16 other things, you just can't check those ads every single day. So having something in place that will automatically boost something that's actually working does have some appeal. Okay, one last story. I wanted to end on a positive note. So let me tell you about Colleen Hoover, who some of you probably already know because she's a very successful writer. She's just inked a deal with Grand Central Publishing, which is part of Hachette, one of the big 5 New York publishers, a deal for a new psychological thriller. Now, she's best known for her romance novels, at least was in the past, but that cover you're seeing for Verity is a book that has done, it still has romantic elements, but it's more of a thriller, and it has done very well. She self-published this book, in 2018, and it's now sold about 900,000 copies. I mean, think about that, 900,000 copies that you self published, meaning you're taking home the majority of the profits. This is a huge success story. Now, just to be clear, she has an agent and she has done traditional publishing books. She's worked with Simon and Schuster's Atria, and she's also worked with what I call retailer based publishing, the most prominent, of course, being Amazon publishing. Now, we're not talking about KDP self publishing, we're talking about her having a deal with Amazon's, separate and yet in the same corporate family publishing company. The romance imprint is Montlake, and she's got a novel from them coming out in 2022. So she's the ultimate hybrid. She's self published, she's traditionally published, she's retailer published. She's pretty much done it all. And now, as a result of years of hard work, she is inking this big deal with Simon and Schuster. I also want to make the point, Sneakers, that she has admitted that there was a period in about the mid-teens, 2013, 14 or so, when her sales dipped seriously, and some people might have been discouraged. She wasn't. She kept writing. She started looking for more avenues, which is why I think she's being published in so many different ways, and she worked through it. She's not an overnight success, but she is definitely a success. All the work paid off because she kept writing, she wrote every day, and she didn't quit. Sneakers, I sign off this podcast the same way every time because these are words I know to be true. I hope you're getting the message. You cannot fail if you refuse to quit. We're talking about perseverance. And here's my segue. Our interview guest today is a testament to the hard work that goes into being a writer and the fabulous results that can come in time when you keep at it. Jesse, let's bring on Tamara Grantham. Hey, Tamara, how you doing today?
I'm doing fabulous. How are you?
Thanks for being on the podcast. I know you're very busy, but you squeeze this in, and I appreciate it. So you may know my traditional first question I always ask: if you could give a writer one piece of advice, not five, that would be an easier question. But if you had to pick one, what would it be?
Well, you know what? I am your student, and I took all of your writing classes. And the advice that you gave me, actually, I remember signing a contract after
You
one of
mean
your writing.
the writer's contract?
Yes, the writer's contract, and you had us write down our writing goal. And so my writing goal was to write 1,000 words a day, 5 days a week. And I signed that contract and I took it seriously. And it's been about 10 years since I signed that contract. And I can say I've stayed true to that goal. And so now I'm working on my 20th novel.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. And so I think my advice would be to keep writing, to write every day, which is basically what you just said. But I think it's the best advice you can give anybody.
Well, and what could be the best? That I asked somebody for one piece of advice, and they quote back something I told them years ago. So
exactly. Yeah. I guess that's kind of cheating, but
no, not at all.
But it's very true.
Talk a little bit, and I'm not just looking for you to stroke me here, but you did. You went to some of those small group intensives, and I know you've been to the annual conferences before. Now you're speaking at them. Mm-hmm. But why? What kept you coming back? What'd you take away from those?
I think as writers, we tend to be overcritical of ourselves. And we feel like if we're not writing things perfectly, that we just shouldn't write at all. And so when I went to your writing classes, it made me realize that every writer goes through this phase where I'm sorry, here's my cat.
Hello, what's his name or her?
That's Chester.
Hey, Chester. Well, this is why I shut the doors in the
Right.
piano room before I do this. Otherwise, Bustifer
It's
would be knocking over everything.
it's Chester Pester is his nickname. So, um, yeah, I was saying that as writers, we tend to be down on ourselves sometimes and think we're not very good. And
Right.
when I went to your workshops, it made me realize that all writers have to go through these struggles. We don't all start out perfectly, and that's okay. That's why you keep writing, because I feel like every day you write, every word you write, you just get better.
That's true. And so is the first part of what you said, that it's, if you're feeling like you're inadequate or you're no good at this, it's not just you. It's a function of the
Mhm.
fact that we all suffer from insecurity, and writing
Mhm.
is just hard. You're not going to get it perfect the first time. In fact, that was the subject of the last Red Sneaker Writers newsletter that I
Mhm.
sent out, was, getting past imposter syndrome.
Right. Mhm.
And convincing yourself you're the real deal. And now I have to put in a plug and say, if you're not getting the newsletter, just go to my website, williambernhardt.com, and sign up for it. So you've got more than 20 books now,
Mhm.
written in about how many years?
10 years.
Holy. And you are not entirely unbusy in your
Right.
personal non-writing life. I hope you don't
That's
mind me
true.
mentioning
No, that's fine. I
you
have
have
5 kids.
5 children. The
Mhm.
youngest is how old?
He's 6. So I have ages 6 through 16.
And most of that time, your husband was in medical school. He's out
That's
now,
right.
right?
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
know how time intensive that is.
Mhm.
Many my younger sister is a physician, among others in my family, and I know what that takes out of you. So you've been holding down the fort and
Right.
raising all those kids, and nonetheless written 20 books in 10 years.
Right. Yeah.
So, sneakers, next time you're thinking, I'm too busy, I can't do that, I want you to take a picture of Tamara, or better yet, buy one of her books and
Yeah, that would
put
be
that on
nice.
the shelf and keep telling yourself, if she can do it, I can do it, right? So, why so many series? You've got, am I counting right? You got 4 or
Mhm.
5 different series going?
Yeah, well, in the first place, I like to read series,
Mhm.
and so that's probably what prompted me to write book series. I feel like with a book series, you get to know the characters more, and you get to know a different side of the characters through each book that you write.
Mhm.
And so I like I like to write fantasy, but I also really love um, the characters and exploring the life of the characters. And while I love like the fantasy ideas, the fantasy world and dragons and things like that, I also love just getting to know more about what motivates a person to do what they do.
Mhm.
So that played a lot into my book Never Call Me Vampire, because I wanted to explore a character who was basically mislabeled as a vampire,
Right.
and how that affected a person. And so there are paranormal elements, and I think it has a fun story, but I also wanted to explore the character, or both characters. There's the vampire character, and then there's his fellow patient who's at this sort of reformed insane asylum, where these people who have been mislabeled as vampires, they go to this
Mhm.
place for treatment. So I I really had fun writing that book. It was a little different than my other fantasy book, but I really enjoyed writing it. And after I wrote it, I didn't originally plan to have it as a series, but I realized
Mhm.
that these characters had more. They had
Right.
more story. There were more stories to tell. So I feel like that's why I like series. I like having more stories to tell.
Sure. I know that book got the #1 bestseller flag on
Mhm.
Amazon. It's
It
not your
did.
only book to do that, but it did, and I
Uh-huh.
think that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I
that was
feel the same
exciting.
way. I hope you don't mind my saying about about series characters. I think people sometimes feel like, oh, well, that's easy writing because you already know the character, you just repeat. I don't feel that way about it at all. I'm working on what'll be the third Kinsey Rivera book right now, and I honestly, genuinely feel like, okay, and now after 3 books or on the 3rd book, I'm really starting to get a grip on who this character is, and writing her better as a
Right.
result of that. I think, and maybe it's just me, maybe I'm slow, but I'm just now starting to really understand what I've got here, and it's really coming to life for me. How many books in each of your series?
Well, my longest series would be my series called Fairy World MD, which is about she's half elf, half human, and she works as a psychologist who helps people who have like depression and just mental anxiety because they visited fairy world and they came back to Earth and they've lost those memories. So that series is 7 books. So that's my longest one.
Wow.
And then I have it's called The Twisted Ever After, and it's a fairy tale retelling trilogy. And so I wrote a Rapunzel retelling for book 1, and then I did The Swan Princess for book 2 and Rumpelstiltskin for book 3. And they're all I wouldn't quite call them retellings. They're more like reimagined fairy tales.
Reimagined, yeah.
Yes. And then the first project I worked on, which you know about, was my Shine books.
Right.
I wrote 4 books for your for the Shine series. And let's see. Then the newer books that I have coming out, I've got the I've got it right here. The Never Call Me Vampire, which you've got back.
I've got that too.
Yes, you've got it too. And I'm writing the sequel right now. So I'm about to wrap that one up, and I'm really pleased with how it's coming along. Good. And I feel like I get to explore a different side of my characters, which, as you were saying, like sometimes it's hard to write a sequel with the same characters because I feel like there's these different aspects of a character that you want to explore, but you don't want to reveal every aspect of the character in the first book because you want to have more to tell in your subsequent novels. And so I've really enjoyed being able to just put my characters in some really horrible situations and then let them figure out how to get out. Like in the second book, one of my characters gets kidnapped, and so they have to try to figure out how to escape that situation. So it's people say authors like to torture their characters, and I think that's kind of true. Like,
yeah, torturing people for fun and profit, right?
Exactly. But then, you have the resolution at the end, and you have that satisfying moment where everything is okay, and you don't want to make it so horrible that they can't move on after that.
That's right. While I'm thinking of it, let me just remind anybody listening to this live stream, if you've got a question for Tamara, just type it into the chat box. I got my eye on it, and we'll pose the question to her. And also, while I'm thinking about it, talk a little bit about The Seventh Lie.
Yes.
Is that a standalone? Is that the first book in a series? What is that?
This is a standalone.
Yeah. That's what I thought, but I didn't want to say something stupid.
Okay.
Tell us about The Seventh Lie.
This is a book I actually wrote several years ago, and it's got more sci-fi elements than my other books, but it still has, I feel like it has a good mystery to solve. So I'm not necessarily a mystery writer, but I love books that have mysteries in them that you're reading and that you want to try to solve along with the main characters. And so it's the idea came from a video that I watched of some of the most mysterious places on Earth. And one of them that most people don't know about is this little island north of Russia, and it's called Champ Island. And it's just a small island, and it's filled with these round sphere-like boulders that are shaped as perfect spheres. And it's scientists have studied it a little bit, and there have been no civilizations that lived there. And they don't know what caused the stones to be shaped that way, because in nature, you can't produce perfectly sphere-shaped stones. And so it was intriguing to me to watch the video and to think, what if, And so that's kind of what launched the idea of the premise for this book. I've got an agent for this corporation called Vortec. Her name is Sabine Harper, and she goes to this island to try to find out what's happening, and as a result gets transported to a different reality where she has to try to find what they call the 7 lies, which are just these objects that she has to find in order to basically stop a solar flare from hitting the Earth. So it's got a lot of elements of mystery. It's got a little bit of romance, and I really enjoyed writing it. I actually rewrote it many times before it was published, but I feel like I'm really proud of the end product.
We've got a question coming in, Tamara, from someone who is about setting, basically, is asking, how do your settings evolve according to the needs of the character?
That's a really great question. I've had people ask me before, what do you outline first, the setting or the characters? And I tend to outline them simultaneously. So I usually, because I write a lot of fantasy, or I write stories that have fantasy elements in them, I use my characters as a way to show the world that I've created. So whatever areas they go to and explore, I always keep in mind my setting. And I always want to make sure it's an interesting setting, because I feel like fantasy readers expect that. Right. They expect something that's a little different than just the coffee shop or whatever it is. Wherever my characters are, I want it to be somewhere a little bit unique, and something that you wouldn't see every day.
Yeah. Well, that kind of sparks another question. I think you mentioned outlining, but as you well know, there's the ongoing controversy in the writing world. Are you a pantser or a planner? Sounds like you might be a planner, which might be the result of you, unfortunately, taking classes with me. But you don't have to agree. What's your how do you plan a book?
Okay, so I do. I tried to write several books when I was a teenager without outlining or plotting, and I would have a certain scene in my mind of what I wanted to be in this book. So I would start writing the book, and I would never get to the scene because my characters, like, I had this idea of a girl standing on a cliff with a dragon flying up to her. That's what I wanted in my book. So I started my story. They go to a beach, they go to a forest, they go to a tavern, but they never make it to the cliff with the dragon flying up to them. And so I would just get so frustrated. And so years later, I decided that I was going to write a book. And I thought, well, if I'm going to write a book, I have to have an outline. I have to know where I'm going with the story. So my first book, I wrote an 11-page outline, and I put beginning, middle, and end, like everything I would need. And then I wrote that book in a month. That was my first book. I wasn't like filtering anything. I was just writing, just for the love of writing. And so after that, I did take your classes, and you helped me figure out my outlining process with the plot points 1, 2, and 3, and with the inciting incident, and with the climax at the end. And so now every time I write a book, I sit down and I write 11 pages of outline. It's just kind of whatever comes to my mind, whatever I think would be good to be included in the book. And after that, I set aside my outline, which I have typed on the computer, and I go to pen and paper, and I write that outline from memory. And if I'm able to remember what I typed on the computer, then I feel like my outline is pretty solid. But if I've forgotten some of the things that I typed, then I know that I need to go back and look at that outline again. And I also go in at that point and figure out what is my plot points 1 and 2, and what is my inciting incident, what's my midpoint. I go in and I put in all those elements. And then after I have all that in place, I feel like I'm ready to start writing the novel. So that's
so definitely some planning in there.
There's definitely a lot of planning, and I won't write a book unless I've gotten all those elements in, because to me it's just a waste of time, because I'll end up getting 20,000 words in and just get frustrated. So
right, that's what I always tell people. Sure, you can start without a plan. You probably know how it starts. You maybe know how it ends, but there's going to come a point. I've been there. I've done it. 50 pages, maybe even 100 pages, but eventually you're going to run out of steam and say, what happens next?
And yes, and that's an awful feeling, because you've written all these words, which is probably pretty good, words up until that point, but if you can't get past those, middle section, kind of the sagging middle, if you can't get past that, then you've kind of, I don't want to say wasted your time, because I feel like every time you write something, you get better, but you've kind of exhausted the story, and you either have to go back and replan and replot the story, and you may end up, rewriting everything. And I don't know. I just feel like it's more frustration when you don't plan in advance.
I think so. Less time. We all have complicated schedules, but if I can skip that hour staring out the window, trying to figure out or remind what happens next, or remind myself what this book is about or where it's going.
Right.
I don't mind modifying the outline as I go along, but anything helps. Here's another question from Karen Joe, a fine writer herself, and she is asking, how long does it normally take to do your outline? See, here's your chance to convince someone who may not be an outliner that she should be. So how long does it take?
I don't usually I would say probably 2 weeks, but I don't usually just outline a book. Usually I'm like editing the last book that I wrote and outlining this other book at the same time. So I'm not usually just focused on one outline. I usually have I've got a lot of irons in the fire, but
yes.
But I would say it takes about 2 weeks. I don't like to rush the outline. I feel like if I rush it, then I'm just not going to be happy with the book. And so if I feel like the outline is taking me too long, it's not a problem for me. I just keep working on the outline until I feel like it's solid. So I would say probably 2 weeks. But, there are times when, I have books that I've had ideas for years, and I've gotten, a couple pages for the outline, and basically all it is an idea. And so those are outlines that I'll have been working on that outline for years, but it's a slow, it's just kind of one of those projects that are at the back of my mind while I'm working on other things.
Sure. Another question I often ask is, what's your writing day look like? But I'm particularly interested with you because you've got so much going on with home life and children. I think you're, even as we speak, you're getting ready to go somewhere.
Yes.
What's your day look like as a writer?
Well, I work better in the morning. I feel like my brain is more awake. But I have had to learn to be extremely flexible. And so my day, it's usually, I try to get maybe 250 words done in the morning before we start our day. And then, I've got to help the kids get off to school. And this year is a little different because now I'm homeschooling my first grader. So,
because you didn't have enough to do, did you?
Right. So. And I'm actually teaching him how to write. So he's learning all about plot and characters.
Oh, you didn't mean penmanship. You meant like
story. He's learning storytelling. He's a natural storyteller. So yeah. So I usually try to write in chunks of 250 words. And so to me, it's kind of good to have a child here that I'm homeschooling because I don't like to sit down and write for like a solid 2 hours. My brain just gets too tired. But if I pare it down into chunks of 250 words, then I've got 4 of those writing chunks during the day. And by the time I get done, I've got 1,000 words written for the day.
That's interesting. I don't mind writing for many, many hours, but when I'm done, I'm done. And there's nothing on earth that's going to take me back to the word processor that day.
Yeah.
Like you, I'm a morning person, so I'll sleep up and get it fresh and go at it again. But that works because that gives time in the afternoon to work on my many other projects, or for you to take care of all those children that you. I mean, I'm sympathetic.
Well, I'm a
raised
glorified
kids too.
taxi driver right now too. So
Are they at that age? Which I
Yes.
also remember. Which is more interruptive for a writer? Is it constantly coming in because somebody needs something, or having to get them to piano lessons? And
I feel like being the taxi driver is harder for a writer because I can't write while I'm driving. So
that's true. Although I remember reading that Ellie or Nora Roberts did all that stuff, but she always had. This is so quaint to think about writing a book with pen and paper, but she always had her notebook with her. And when the kids were in there doing their scales and arpeggio, she was sitting in the car writing and just used every available second, which it's clear that you do as well.
Yes, I usually bring my laptop with me wherever we go, and if I have a few minutes, I'll sit there and write. I had to get a surgery earlier this year, and I brought my computer to the hospital with me and wrote before the surgery. After the surgery wasn't so good, but
well, what else are you going to do in there? You sound great though, so I assume it all worked out well.
Yes.
Good. Excellent.
Yes.
That's good to hear. Well, you spoke at WriterCon, so that must be true. Do any of these kids or husband read your books?
They all do. Well, the ones that can read.
Well, yeah.
My husband actually refers to himself as my alpha reader. So anytime I finish, anytime I finish a manuscript, it goes to him first. And yes,
he's not unbusy himself.
No, he's very busy, but he does try to make time for my writing, and he's actually one of my biggest supporters and cheerleaders, and he likes to write a little bit too, but I think he's living vicariously through me right now, just because his schedule is very demanding.
Probably so, but how nice to have such a smart and support. I mean, I know. As if medical school didn't say enough. I know you're both smart because you both won the Jeopardy contest last year at WriterCon,
which
was
big bragging rights for that one.
nail-biting competition, but in the end, you guys surged on Final Jeopardy. I don't remember what it was, but
I'm pretty sure my husband answered that final question, but
doesn't matter. It's a team effort. You can take credit for that.
Yes, I think I got the Jane Austen question right.
There you go. So what's the future look like for you? What's coming up next? And what do you want to do that you haven't done?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. As far as my writing goes, I'm really excited to get the sequel for my vampire book finished up. I think it's going to be really a really fun book. It's a little darker than some of my other books, but I still think it's got a great story. I've also got a middle grade fantasy series that is coming out in November, which is my first time to write middle grade. And I really did it because I've got kids who are that age, they're always looking for something to read. And especially my boys, they feel like that there's not a lot for them in the library. They feel like most of the books are geared towards girls. So I decided, well, I could write a book for boys at that age. So that book is called The Not So Chosen One. So it's a spoof of the hero's journey. Yeah, it's got a lot of humor. It's very lighthearted, and I think it'll make a good Christmas gift for people. For people looking for kids.
Those
books.
Christmas gifts you should order early. So
right, yes.
That's wonderful. I always read
Yeah.
to my children too, but not my work, which too often involved a lot of murder and mayhem. And what I do remember, when she was in her teens, Alice read my Christmas book. I thought, okay, that's okay. It's a Christmas book, so
Right.
obviously it wasn't too rough. And then she finished it in like a couple hours. And I said, "What'd you think?" And she was like, "Eh,
Oh
meh, it's all right.
no.
Pass some time." Now she reads. Now she's an editor and reads my work, and she's tough,
Oh
but
goodness.
that's what you want. She does not
Right?
cut Dad any
Yeah.
slack. So
Okay.
give it another 10, and you might have a new alpha editor in addition to your
Right.
husband there.
Yeah, maybe so.
Do you have any dream books or dream career goals or anything like that?
Oh, that's a good question too. Um, sometimes I get a little over focused on
Mhm.
I want to be a New York Times bestseller and I want
Mm,
to be the keynote speaker at a conference. And
mm,
sometimes I can get carried away with thinking I'm not progressing fast enough and I'm not reaching those goals fast enough. And I have to just take a step back and say, yes, those would be great if that happens someday. But I just need to remember to enjoy writing and
mhm,
enjoy that and remember that I love to write. And that's really the reason why I write in the first place, is because I love to do it. I love to create worlds. I love for people to read my books and to sympathize with my characters. Some of my characters I've written who struggle with mental health issues, and I like reading books of characters who go through difficult things and find their way out of it. And I feel like that's a great way for people to kind of sympathize with somebody else going through something like they're going through.
mhm.
So really for me, that's probably my main goal, is just to help other people when they read a book, to help, just maybe um, lift up their spirits a little bit,
Right.
or just help them understand that they're not alone in whatever they're going through.
That's what literature does, don't you think?
Hmm.
I mean, it does many things, but if nothing else, it reminds you you are not alone. Other
Right.
people have been through this just like
Hmm.
you have, and here's a book that may help.
Right.
I think that's a terrific goal. So,
Hmm.
20 books. This is kind of a leading question, but whatever. Do you feel like you've grown as a writer? I know you've grown as a writer, but I wonder if you feel the sense that, yeah, I'm kind of working at a higher level now than I was at
Yeah.
one time.
Oh yeah, definitely. I was telling you about my first book that I wrote in a month. Which I had so much fun doing, and that 1 month was just it was magical. I loved
Mhm.
writing, and I wasn't filtering anything because I didn't know any of the rules. So I was just writing what I wanted to write. And later
Mhm.
I had editors look at it. I still love that story, but it definitely was a teaching. It was a learning novel for me. So, yeah, I definitely feel like I've made quite a bit of progress since book one.
Yeah. Can you think of any particular tips? Because I know everybody listening to this would love to have some great writing tips. What are some of the things you've learned
Um,
along the way that have improved your writing?
So, and I was telling you about how my husband calls himself my alpha reader. And
Right?
one of the things he did when I first started writing is every Christmas, he would buy me 4 or 5 books on writing, on the craft of
Really?
writing.
Hmm.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And I just devoured those books because it was just so interesting to me to see so one of the books was called The First 5 Pages by Noah
Mhm.
Lukeman. And he basically dissected what almost all writers do as far as mistakes go when they're writing their first novel, and just talking about things like dialogue and adverbs and adjectives, and just things that were surprising to me, that almost all writers make these same mistakes, which I don't really understand why most writers all make the same mistakes when they're first starting out.
Mhm.
And then when I started taking your classes, I bought all of your books, all of your writing books, which are fabulous too. And I still refer back to those, especially the story structure books, when I was telling you how
Right.
I do my outline for my novel, I use that. I use the story structure for my outlining process.
Hmm. Well, I feel like I should have some, and now that Tamara has promoted these classes, you too can say, except I'm
Right.
not doing any till next year. So
Oh
it's
dear.
down to, but sometime next summer, I'll do more intensives. And of course, WriterCon
Okay.
will be back in the fall. Hey, Tamara, thanks for taking time out from your very busy schedule to do this. I really appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
You bet. See you soon, I hope.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Let me just say again, please help me spread the word about my new book, Exposed, Book 2 in the Kinsey Rivera Splitsville legal thrillers series. And, I've said this before, but it's true. Please rate or review this show wherever you get podcasts. It does make it easier for new people to discover us. You can follow us on any of these, but you can subscribe at anywhere, Apple, Google Play, whatever. You can support us on Patreon. um, it's Patreon that makes it possible for us to keep this thing ad free. And you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, and perhaps most importantly, tell your writing friends that they need to be listening to the Red Sneaker Writers podcast. All right, until next time. Hey, sneakers, keep writing. Do what Tamara said. Keep writing, work at it, don't quit. And remember, you cannot fail if you refuse to quit. See you next time.